two, three. This time of day, everything's okay. I take a long look around, I have to say, this time of year, it becomes clear.
Hello, welcome to your friends and neighbors. I'm your host, Willie Jones, and I thank you for tuning in today. If it's your first time, welcome. And if you've been watching us for the last few months here, thank you very much to you. We did a show not too long ago with Ellen Varick, and she was my guest. And you know what? We didn't have enough time to get through everything we wanted to talk about. So we are going to continue today with part 2. And I will welcome Ellen Varick to our show today. Good afternoon, Ellen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Willie, and I'm very honored to be asked to come again.
Well, I'm so glad that you could come back and we can continue our conversation. And before we start today, I remember our show is called Don't Fence Her In. And you don't want to fence this woman in because she won't allow it. She will not allow herself to be fenced in.
That's
So
true.
I have a book here of poems by Langston Hughes, one of my favorite poets. And there's a poem that I'd like to read today that I think will lead us into our conversation, and it's titled Dreams. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. And I believe, Ellen, you have made sure that a lot of your dreams have come true.
An awful lot of them have come
You
true.
have made sure that that happens. And one of the things that last time we did get to talk a lot about your adventures, experiences with your husband, Phil, in Alaska. But one of the things we did not dwell on was the fact that you had this love for horses from a very early age. So what is it that caused horses to become such an important part in your life? How did that happen?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't the slightest idea because nobody else in my family was interested in horses.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up at a school run by my great aunt Mabel Thomas in Connecticut. And every spring and every fall, a few horses were brought down from Wilton for use by the school because the school gave riding lessons in the spring and in the fall.
This is in Connecticut.
In
Right?
Connecticut, in Rowayton, Connecticut. And the horses came from Wilton, and they had to be ridden back and forth from Wilton, which was back roads and tarmac and whatnot. But that came much later. When I was very young, I already was crazy about horses, and I think horse crazies are born and not made. And it's kind of a disease. If you're a horse crazy, you just never get over it.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I wanted horses so bad that I carved them out of wood. We had a woodcraft teacher who was very tolerant of what we wanted to make in woodcraft, and we had that from 6th grade through 12th grade. And I made 2 horses. One had my hair for a tail, and I was sort of blonde at the time. The other one was a larger horse. He was made out of a 2-inch pine plank carved and run around on the jigsaw and then sandpapered and whatnot.
How much of your hair did you take out for
I
that tail?
took out a good little hunk of it. But then when I was older, a friend of mine had a very fancy calfskin covered toy horse from, FAO Schwartz or something.
Oh, fancy.
But she had tossed it in a corner, and it had lost its feet, its hoofs, and it had lost its tail. And so I asked her if I could have it. It was just tossed aside in her garage, and she said, oh, sure. So I took it home. It was a Palomino. It needed a white tail, and my grandmother, who was a dear, could see that, and she took down her bun and cut off the end of her white hair for me to put on my toy horse, and I still have it.
What a great grandmother. I've
She
never
was
seen
wonderful.
that. Oh, yeah.
No, it's
We'll
in
have
my
to show it
bedroom. I'll show it
sometime,
to you.
yeah.
And I still have the other 2 also that
Yeah.
I made out of wood.
Now, this school, was it just for girls, or was it?
It was not just for girls.
No,
It was
okay.
boys and girls. It was
Okay.
started in 1922.
Okay.
My aunt had taught for Miss Windsor's in Boston, and Mary Windsor had been a mentor to her. And she first taught after Miss Windsor's at St. Agnes in Albany, I believe, and then she started her own school in 1922. And I grew up there. My mother taught art there, and my grandmother, when she was widowed, came down and lived there and was always the person who mended the clocks. And she kept a big garden.
Ah.
And she was a very amusing woman. She had been a newspaper reporter in New York City way before women did that sort of thing. And then she'd married an old friend of her family. Her father was a Methodist minister. But anyway, to get back to horses, I just always wanted a horse so bad.
And what did you do with those horses that you carved?
Well,
Tell me.
we had horse shows for toy horses, and we had classes for China horses and horses 6 inches and under and 8 inches and over and so forth. And my dear riding teacher, who was Mrs. Frank Thompson from Wilton, came down in her best riding regalia to judge this horse show that I put on for the toy horses, and all my friends brought their toy horses. And it was quite an affair, and she acted like it was a very solemn occasion. And what an amazing lady she was.
I'm sure that sounds wonderful.
And the interesting
she would
thing
do
is
that.
that her grandson, Philip Schenck, has just moved to Arlington after being town manager of Avon, Connecticut for years and years and years and years.
Huh.
And I had supper with him the other day. And I've known him since he was in a little basket on his grandma's back porch. And now he's town manager in Bloomfield, Connecticut.
gee,
You
but-
just never know.
So he has a summer home here in Arlington? Is that what?
It's going to be a year-round home
eventually.
sometime, but he was supposed to have retired, but then he got talked into doing 3 more years for a different town.
So how did you do in the contest?
Well, I don't even remember
You don't
that. I just
remember?
remember the fun of making little jumps for them to jump over, and we had
Oh,
to
geez.
gallop them around in circles and do all the things that horses do at horse shows. And on our hands and knees on the living room floor. It was pretty silly.
So how old were you?
Oh, I don't know, 8 or 10 probably,
Wow.
or maybe 6 or 8. I don't really remember. I'm not good on time.
Now, what were China horses? Were they made of China?
Made of China, oh yeah.
Oh, you had to be careful running
oh,
those
yeah,
around.
you had to be careful how you
Yeah.
did those.
Did you have any of those yourself?
Yes, I had a
Yes?
couple of those. Yeah, we all had different kinds, and I had made programs and entry forms and whatnot, like a real horse show. And I still have a horse. I'm 86 years old, but I bought a horse from the neighbor for my kids when we first moved to Vermont in 1954. And then I bought a second one because the 2 younger ones were both horse crazies like their mother. And then they outgrew those because they were small, and we had to get a bigger horse. And then eventually I got a horse given me off the harness track in Saratoga, which I still have. I've had her for quite a number of years. She got injured, and so she gets me up in the morning. I have to get up, and that's a good thing when you're 86 to have something you have to get up for.
Rain or shine,
Rain,
snow.
shine, sleet, or snow,
she
you
is
have
out
to
there
get up.
shoveling you know what.
Yep, indeed I am. And if anybody
Unbelievable.
needs some for their garden, we've got a perpetual motion machine.
Well, and that's right, and you've got your wonderful gardens around there, so I'm sure.
I have too many gardens,
I'm
and
sure
some
your
of them are
horse-
going to pot.
You know, I'm sure your horse is very helpful.
And I have 2 old hens,
Uh-huh.
and I occasionally get an egg from them, but mostly they're backyard pets. And I've had to put fences around my gardens because I don't like to fence my hens in. They don't like to be
no,
fenced
they like
in
to,
either.
Yeah, sure.
So I've let them out, and they wander all over. In fact, when I was coming this afternoon, I found them roosted on the top of the ramp that goes into my house. We
Oh,
have a
geez.
ramp so Philip can get in with his
Right,
walker.
right.
And there they were, right by the door, waiting for me to come out. They like to garden with me. I dig things up, and they grab the earthworms.
Did you give them names?
Yes, one is Miss Toes because she has crooked toes.
Oh,
She came from my niece in Keene, New Hampshire. And the other one is Henny Penny.
Henny Penny.
And
The
I
old-
got
the
her
old-
from a nice Mennonite lady over on the East Road. And so they keep me in the occasional egg, which I like
right,
to eat.
right.
And but horse crazy just never get over being crazy. I went last week, Saturday, up to East Dorset to the big hunter jumper show up there and watched the professional Olympic level people do their jump off, which happens on Saturdays at 1 o'clock. And so I'm still a horse crazy.
They've
Once
been
a horse
doing-
crazy, always a horse
Right.
crazy.
Well, they've been doing that for quite a few years up there,
Yes,
right?
they have for several years, and it goes on for 6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks. Oh, wow. I was thinking it's just a couple. Oh, my,
Well,
6
it's either
weeks.
5 or 6, I forget.
So will you visit
But,
again?
I probably will go
You
again.
probably
I
will go
love to
again.
go and watch. And they have 5 different rings going up there for other horse crazies. They have little kids on ponies, and they have medium-sized kids on small horses, and then they have a couple of other rings, and then the main ring, which has a bleachers beside it, which is for the professionals and Olympic level people.
So when did you finally get to a point where you had a real horse? Little Ellen. When did you get a real
Well,
horse?
not until we came to Vermont in 1954.
So you weren't so little.
No, I wasn't so
No,
little. I had a couple of kids
okay.
and another on the
Oh,
way.
right. Oh.
And the neighbors had these 2 little horses. They had bought a young horse for their young daughter, and that's not a good combination. You get old horses for young people and young horses for older people. That
Oh,
works
okay.
better,
Oh, okay.
because this horse wasn't but just green broke, which means she didn't know much. And neither did the little girl, so that doesn't work very
No,
well.
no, I wouldn't think.
A wise old horse can teach you a great deal. A neighbor offered my husband a skid horse, a working horse, to haul logs out of the woods, because we used to bring our own logs home from our woodlot to burn.
Did you say skin or skid?
Skid.
Skid. All right. So bring in the
skidding
logs.
logs out of
Right,
the woods is
sure.
to pull logs.
Gotcha.
And Phil said, well, I don't know how to work with a horse. And the neighbor said, oh, that's all right. He knows. You just show him where you want the logs put, and she'll put them there. And she did. She went back and forth all day.
Yeah.
Once he showed her where he wanted them piled, she'd draw them up even with each other, and he'd unhitch her, and she'd go back to where she was. Horses are pretty darn smart.
She was good for old Moose Jaw, huh?
Yes.
I remember.
no
we
moose
talked
jaw,
about
learned how to
your
use a
husband getting
horse.
the name Moose Jaw
Oh,
when you were
yes.
in Alaska. So,
Yeah.
when did you start riding horse? Is that when you started riding?
Well, I started riding when I was a little kid
Okay.
at this school where they brought the horses down from Wilton.
Okay, but you didn't. But you didn't own a
I
horse.
never
until
owned a
later.
horse until
Oh,
I
okay.
got to Vermont. Yes,
okay.
I'd always wanted to, but
Right, and the horse you have now, do you find this horse is pretty smart? I know you've
She's
told
very
me
smart.
different things that I would think. He does sound pretty smart.
well, she's pretty smart. She was waiting for me when I got home from the ballet in Saratoga last night, about almost midnight. She was waiting for me by her stall door,
Yeah.
and I thought the door was open. She could have gone in,
Right.
gone to bed, but no, they're very into routine.
Uh-huh.
I had to give her grain and give her a couple of flakes of hay,
And that was
and
pretty
then
late.
she would go in, and I shut the door.
Pretty late.
Yes,
We're-
way past her bedtime.
By the way, we are taping this show on Friday, July 11th, and Ellen is talking about going to the ballet at Saratoga. It opened this week before the 11th, and so just to let people know, the show that we're taping, we taped it in July 11th, just so you know that.
Right, and the ballet is only going for 1 week. It'll be
Right.
over. Saturday night is the last night.
We'll talk about the ballet. I want to talk about that a little bit, but you go over to Saratoga quite often. Now,
I
what are
do.
your roots over there? Because you've had a
Well-
lot of different little jobs and different things that you've done there. You had a little routine for a while.
Well, I have a very dear friend who is a trainer over there. She trains other people's horses, and she has a couple of horses of her own. And she has taken me to the fairs. She likes to race her horses at the fairs all over New York State and Vermont. She also races horses at the Saratoga harness track. You can keep a horse there for free as long as they're actively racing. And She has had as many as 10 horses in her care. Right now she's working for another trainer because she's down to only 2 of her own. And they had a fire at the track a couple of months ago, I guess, and her
yeah, I
horses
remember
got
that.
smoke inhalation
Ooh.
and had to be put out to pasture till they got over the effects of
Oh,
the
my
fire.
God.
None of them got burned, but one got cut up pretty badly because it panicked when they were trying to get it out of the stall.
Mm.
It came through from the stalls on the other side of the barn. They've got stalls down each side. And anyway, Debbie is a wonderful person, and she used to take me to the fairs to help out. So I walked horses cool for her after they raced them, and she always had very nice, well-behaved horses that an old lady could handle.
Yeah. Did you
They were
s-
very considerate of me.
Did you go down to Pownell to the Green Mountain Racetrack at all?
No, I didn't,
You
but
didn't
my
go there?
husband used to work at one of the windows there.
Oh, okay.
He was a cashier,
Okay. I had a couple friends that did that too.
and he mentioned one night it was terrible. Some poor fellow who had been at a window where they, I guess they cashed $2 bets, and he got put at a $10 window after he'd been used to doing the $2 window, and he gave out much too much money
Oh, geez.
by mistake, and they made him take it out of his pay.
Woo. They were tough.
Yes,
They
they
were
were very tough.
So you still continue to go over to Saratoga.
Oh yeah.
You'll probably, is it next?
I won't go on a rainy night. I
No,
don't
well.
like to drive back in the rain, but I still drive a lot. And
I know you do.
I don't mind driving at night as long as it's not raining.
Right. And that drive over to Saratoga is not the easiest drive.
No, some of the roads are quite twisty-wisty, but they're well marked. New York State marks its curvy roads with great big shine-in-the-dark arrows and whatnot. They're very well marked. And to go to the harness track, you go for free. It doesn't cost anything to go to the harness track except for your program. That's $2. And there's a wonderful lady who makes delicious hot dogs. They're more like kielbasa.
Ooh.
I stopped in last night on the way home to see her because they were just finishing the last race, and I go by the harness track coming home from SPAC.
Yeah.
And I saw her. She said, "You haven't been over this year." I said, "No, but I'm going to be coming soon."
Now, explain to me the betting on horses. How does that work? I really
Betting?
don't.
I'm not into betting much.
So you can't explain to me. I mean, I'm not
I'm
sure.
not good at that. Well, there's lots of different ways of betting, and you can just put $2 on a horse and to win, or to place, or to show,
And
which
there's
means
usually,
first, second, or third.
and there are people.
But then
there,
there's combinations, and you can bet on several horses, and if you get all of them, you get a huge amount of money, but of course that's most unlikely to happen.
there are people there called totes that you can go to see who the favorite horse is and stuff like that. Is that?
Well, they do have people that are well known for being good handicappers who do
Handicappers.
read off the ones they would choose.
Right.
They usually have a couple of different handicappers' choices
Right.
that they introduce the horses with when they read them off the loudspeaker. But the flat track opens, the thoroughbred track opens next Sunday, and I'm probably going over with my friend Debbie to opening day.
Well, I'm not surprised at that at all.
Don't want to miss that.
Right, right. So I went to one horse race over at Saratoga.
Yeah.
I just feel that the race is so fast and it's over so quick. I feel like what an easy way to lose money. I
Oh
mean,
yes,
man,
it
it's
is.
boom, it's
That's
over.
why I don't bet.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, my God, this is ridiculous.
Once in a while I see something that I think might be a sure thing, but they never turn out to be.
But I am amazed. I
Hardly
called
ever.
the Hunter's Pace up in Shasbury. I can't remember the name of that place, but I did that one year, and
Up
I
on
cannot.
Trumbull Hill.
Yeah, and
That
those.
was Edie Devons.
I don't know how those little slim little legs can hold the weight of those horses.
Yeah, because a lot of horses are 1,000 pounds, 1,200
I know
pounds.
That
Well,
was a-
they do crack, and they've had some very sad things happen. There was somebody came in second in one of the big Triple Crown races and had to be disposed of,
Right,
they
right.
say politely. she broke down and collapsed after she finished the race, having come in second. She had cracks in both front feet. So it is a terribly stressful thing.
Yeah.
And the thoroughbred track has quite a soft surface, but the harness track, the trotting track, it's got quite a hard surface, and they really pound around. That's how my horse got a crack in one front leg, and then they thought they had her all mended. She'd been not racing for a long time. She went back to racing and cracked it again, so she was given to me as a backyard pet. And she's a wonderful backyard pet. People say, why don't you ride her? Well, she's not a riding horse. She's never been broken to be ridden. And I don't know that she should carry the weight if she's had an injured foot.
Right.
And she did the mile in 1:56. And when people did the mile in 4 minutes, they thought they were pretty darn good.
Right.
Well, she did it in a minute and 56 seconds, and I don't want to go that fast at my age. So
Well,
I don't hitch her to anything. I just feed her and clean up after her.
I know once in college I got shin splints.
Oh, ouch.
Oh my!
My daughter got shin
And
splints.
you know, and thank God they didn't put me out to pasture because man, I was doing a play at Castleton State College at the time, and
Yeah.
you know I had to be performing, and I had oh man, it was something else. Now,
Yeah.
do
My daughter that did a lot of running races for Mount Anthony High School. In fact, she beat the boys at 5 miles, and they didn't like that very much. She is still hiking up and down the Rocky Mountains, and right now she's about to start on a 385-mile hike down the crest trail of the Rocky Mountains with a friend and her dog,
oy, with a
and
friend
hopes
and
to
her dog.
take in a few of the couple of the 14,000-foot mountains on the way. She's trying to do them all before she has to quit, and she's pushing 60.
Oh, thank God! Aren't you glad you're not around there? I mean, aren't you
Yes.
glad you're here in Vermont? I mean,
Yes.
as a parent, I think I would be so worried. Of course, she's 60. I mean, she should know what she's
She
doing.
has a
but-
pair of legs that any 20-year-old would be proud of, and she loves to wear short shorts still,
Yeah.
and they look fine on her. She was here a few weeks ago, and for a week and a half she just did nothing but work, help me fix fences, and she uses a chainsaw, and she majored in carpentry at Fort Lewis College in Durango.
Yeah. Well, I know you're out
She's
there.
an amazing lady.
If she wasn't there, I know you're out there repairing stuff yourself. And how
Well,
many
I do
gardens
quite
do
a
you
bit.
have?
Well,
I
I
know
have a
you've cut
lot
down.
of very overgrown flower gardens, but I now have 2 squares of vegetables, and I have fenced them so that the hens can be loose, because they don't want to be fenced in. I
Right,
guess
right.
I said that already, didn't I?
Right. And she makes a wonderful rhubarb sauce.
Oh, yes. We have
Oh.
enough rhubarb for all of Bennington County.
You still have it?
Oh, yes.
Oh, how long a season does rhubarb
Well,
have?
you have to stop picking it about now,
Oh, okay.
and you pull it. You don't cut it.
Okay.
You pull the roots, you pull the leaves out, and they come out, and you just use the stem and throw the leaf away. I use
Right.
them for mulch. And we have red Canadian sweet rhubarb. It's very different from the old green sour stuff. You
So
don't need
good.
nearly as much sugar.
So good. Oh, that's good.
It's very good.
That's good if you're diabetic. You don't want a lot of extra sugar. I
Well,
don't.
you still need quite a lot.
But
But Phil adores rhubarb sauce. I'm not as fond of it as he is, but
It's
I
really
take
good.
him some at the Veterans Home, and he likes that.
now, with all you've had a lot of gardens in the past with flowers and veggies, and maybe that can take us into your one of your other jobs or whatever you want to call it, painting. Now,
Yes.
have you done a lot of painting of your gardens?
I
and-
have, and I used to take my classes out in the garden, and we painted sometimes vegetables and sometimes more usually flowers, and sometimes we went up on top of the hayfield and did mountain views and looking down at the farm from the top of the hill and things like that. And I've had a lot of different students over the years and enjoyed it very much. In fact, Shelley Duboff used to come to me as
Oh.
a student. Now she paints 3 times as well as I ever did.
I love that woman. I love her art. I mean, I like
She's just
everything
great,
about
and
Shelley.
She does wonderful animal portraits.
She's a sweetheart.
She does anything.
When I first joined with Oldcastle, she was so nice to me, and and there was no reason why she had to be. I mean, I was the
Well,
new
that's
kid
just
on the
way
block,
she is.
but
She's
she was
very,
a nice.
very nice.
So,
yeah.
so how did you? When did art come into your life? Very young, right?
Yes, I don't remember. I think
You
it's
were
always
carving
been there.
horses.
My mother was an artist as well as an architect and landscape architect. And I know that my notebooks all through school were full of portraits of my teachers and or fellow students, and they would always had the margins full of sketches. I just drew constantly.
Were you always carrying a little sketch pad with you? So if you saw something, you could sketch it and then paint it later, or do
Well,
you have to be right there to?
I like to have something in front of me when I do
Right.
it. I'm not one of these really creative, artistic people. I can see something that moves me and put it down on paper fairly accurately, and I'm not very
I would say it's
creative.
more than fairly accurate myself. I mean, I
Well,
think,
maybe you're thinking of that cabbage that I saved because it really was a pretty good picture of a cabbage, if I do say so. That's hanging up in my dining room.
well, you gave me this. Well, you had something that you were going to get rid of, and you don't remember it, but it was like this big cauldron type or big pot, and it was like a long onion, and I just loved it. And you said, "You want it? Take it." So
I don't remember that one at
No,
all.
I
I've got
did take
bins
that.
of flower paintings that are left over from when I did it with classes in our garden.
Were there artists that when you were younger that you really, you emulated, or you were really?
Well, I can remember when everybody was having a crush on a movie star in high school. I had a crush on Michelangelo, and I wanted to be a sculptor. And I did take studio sculpture for 4 years when I was at college. But then I met this handsome young man
That's
during my
right.
senior year and
That's
got
right.
married very rapidly. I think I met him in January, got engaged in June, and married in December of my senior year. And I'm still married to him.
And you have painted in some unbelievable places. Where are some of the places that you had painted? Because you're pretty
Well,
prolific.
I've painted, let's see, well, I painted a lot in Alaska,
Right.
and I did a series of pastel pictures that I used to put up in the post office in Cordova, Alaska, and sell for $10 a piece, and I kept the original drawing, and they were sort of what tourists would buy postcards of around town.
That's great.
And I kept the original, and so every time they bought that particular view, I would make another copy of it
Yeah.
and put it back up there.
Oh, that's
I
great.
made my spending money that way
Sure,
when I was
yeah.
in Cordova, because I was
Yeah.
busy with kids at the time.
You went out west too, right? Didn't you go out
Yeah,
west?
I went out west, but I went out west to study geology and then botany and forestry a second summer.
Unbelievable.
And I majored in geology, actually. I intended to major in art, but I didn't. I minored in art. And studio art got very little credit at Vassar. And I was recently back at my 65th reunion, and I noticed they're still having that argument between the history of art department and the studio art people, and they're trying to integrate it better. They were in separate buildings, and they had very separate points of view, which is why I didn't end up majoring in art, because I wanted to do more studio stuff. I did do a lot of history of art, but
Your 65th reunion,
Yes.
college reunion.
yes.
And I believe you told me that there's, surprisingly enough, there are a lot of your class that are
We were a
still.
combined class, 48 and 49. Some 48s were accelerated 49s that did it in 3 years, and some 49s were real 49s, of which I was, did it in 4 years. And some 48 started out as 48, so we were a mixed bag. But there were 70 of us that came back to reunion, so many that they couldn't put us up in the alumni house or the dormitories, and they had to put us in a Hampton Inn that was quite a ways from the college, and
That's wonderful.
shuttle us back and forth. It was great.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. Now, you used to have these very fancy skit nights or something. Is that still going on? You used to
which?
have the little acts, the little skit nights or something like that? Wasn't there one teacher or one of the people that would put little shows together? What were
That wasn't
those?
a teacher. That was one of my classmates, Joan
Okay.
Javits.
Oh, okay.
And she's actually I think she has a show off Broadway, wherever that is right now, and I can't remember the name
Oh,
of
good
it.
for her.
And she's written a lot of songs and a number of shows, and I think she did have one put on Broadway at one time.
Huh.
And she's a very, very talented gal, and I spent a week with her in Waitsfield, where she summers in the Vermont. She winters in her mother's winter home down in West Palm Beach or some such place in Florida in the wintertime. She used to live in Westport, Connecticut.
Oh, I'll have to check that name out and see what she's done as far
And
as
I can
shows.
remember, well, this is kind of off the subject, but at Joan's house, her mother used to pay for the lessons for promising Juilliard students.
Oh, what an
And
oh,
amongst
wow.
the ones that she helped start were Yo-Yo Ma and Leon Fleischer and a number of other equally well-known people. And Leon Fleischer was about 15 when I was about 14 or 13. And I was over at Jones for the weekend, and he was there practicing for his lesson. And I believe he just retired recently.
Yeah.
But we were lolling about on the furniture, and of course, like any boy of 15, he had to show off, and he was swooping up and down the piano like crazy, playing Rachmaninoff's Second or something.
Right.
But he lost the use of his right hand at one point.
Oh.
Nobody could quite figure out why. But eventually he got it back, and I've got a disc that she recently gave me called Both Hands.
Oh,
And after a lot of therapy, both physical and emotional, he got the use of his right hand back again, and I think he was directing at Tanglewood at one point. But if I'm 86, he's got to be 90 by now.
wow.
But this was fairly recent.
Are there
disc that he'd
are
made.
there artists nowadays that you really like a lot? I mean, do you pay much attention to the artists that are around now,
Well,
or in the
yes,
in the
I
recent
do. I
past?
was for many years a volunteer and also a member of the Southern Vermont Art Center, and I spent a lot of time up there. Brian Sweetland was one of my very favorite artists, and he died in a very tragic accident. But I noticed they're having a one-man retrospective show for him up there soon. I believe it's soon. I got something about it in the mail.
What was his medium? Medium.
Oil.
Oil.
Oil, yeah. But I studied with a number of wonderful watercolor teachers in various places. I went out west for 2 weeks with Milford Zorns, and I can't remember all the people. I went to Ireland with Carlton Plummer and his wife and studied there, and I went back again to St. Ives and the Scilly Isles out of Cornwall, England, with him and his wife as well.
Oh wow! So you've been out of.
I've done a lot of
you've been
painting
abroad,
in
too.
different places, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful experience, and it's really terrific to paint with other people. It's very stimulating.
I know on the way into your house, the shed or the mud room, whatever you call. Well, actually, it's your studio.
My mudroom looks like a mudroom, and it is my studio.
It
You're
is your
so
studio.
right.
As you go in, you have up on the wall there a lot of these artists that you either worked with.
That I worked with, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
One wall is my paintings, and another wall is my teacher's paintings.
And you have a lot of paintings.
I have a ton of old paintings, but they're not my best ones. They're mostly ones I did as demonstrations teaching. I've got an awful lot of flower paintings. Most of my best ones have been sold, and there's very few of them that I'm satisfied with. Artists are never satisfied with their own work. But there are one or two that I like and I haven't sold.
Right,
so
right. And you're
I
very
keep
good
them
about
up on the wall.
You're very good about donating too, to
I
different
love
causes.
to donate paintings to causes, and I've often done house portraits as a donation for different causes, and I've painted an awful lot of houses around Bennington and Old Bennington.
I know Bill Botso does that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, he paints
it's a
houses.
great money raiser for organizations.
Sure.
But I haven't done much painting the last 2 or 3 years,
I have to
and
say,
I want to get back to it. I'd like to get back to oil painting now that I have plenty of time. I took up watercolor mostly because I was teaching,
right.
and I didn't have much time.
A couple of my favorite artists, and maybe you can tell me what you think about them. One is Georgia O'Keeffe, and the
I
other
love
one
her.
is Edward Hopper. He is my absolute favorite.
That's interesting.
I love Hopper. And isn't that a difference between
Yeah,
Georgia
that's
O'Keeffe
a-
and Ed? But
that's
I
a big
love the
difference.
realism of
Yeah.
Hopper. I just love
Well,
that.
I tend to be Monet, Van Gogh, the
The
Impressionists.
more classic, yeah, more classic.
The Impressionists. I like very free stuff. My stuff tends to be more meticulous than I would like it to be. And I admire those people that can do very free stuff.
I know Mike Bethel, who does artwork. He's very meticulous in his paintings. I've seen a couple of his before, and he's very meticulous. I mean, you look at it, and you know, they're beautiful, but very meticulous.
Well, some are so photographic, I don't know how they do it. Leslie Park has been doing some beautiful things. She lives in Cambridge, of glassware and china sitting in dishwater and getting the bubbles and the glisten and the shine. There's all kinds of amazing things. She's done a great many different kinds of painting at different times. She loves to experiment. And I'm very lucky to have quite a good collection of my own of people I know that paint around here. I always try to get one of each one. I have one of hers and one of George Van Hook's, and he does wonderful landscapes over, and he's in Cambridge also.
I'm always impressed. I know it's the word luminosity or whatever, when they can get the moonlight on the lake, or
it's amazing what people can do with light.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
Handling light is the main aspect of painting, whichever medium you're using, and learning how to handle light. And light, the different kinds of light effects are what attract people to a particular scene. It may look very ordinary one day, and then the sun comes out one day and hits it a different way, and you think, oh wow, I want to paint that.
Right. Well, I know when we're sitting here before the show started, this book, which is open here for no good reason except for effect, Ellen said, now, is that going to be too much of a glare? Is that going to be a glare? And so we checked with Ryan Stutt, who is filming our show today. We asked him, and he said, oh, no, it's small enough, it'll be okay. But as an artist, of course, you were concerned about the reflection.
Well, we have a black tablecloth and that white book, and I was afraid that was such an extreme contrast.
We have this dark,
and a dark curtain behind us.
Oh, we got black now. Usually we have green. I was going to say, good thing the green isn't there today, because we would have blended right in.
Well, that's kind of navy blue. That's
Is
nice.
it? Okay. All right. I don't know.
Well,
Navy
I can
blue,
see
black,
there's something
whichever.
green behind it.
Yeah, well, that is if they want to do a green screen and different things like that. So.
Well, they do wonderful photography here, and once long ago I took their orientation course and was a producer of a series of things. I didn't make the programs, but I introduced them, and I can't even remember now what the subject matter was.
Well, and of course,
Cat
TV.
Quite a few years ago.
Cat TV has been here a long time, and you know, and that's what a lot of people, I don't think, still realize, that Cat TV, if you want to come to Cat TV, they have these open houses where you could learn more about it. If you have an idea for a show, or if you take the course and you want to be a producer, you want to know how to handle the cameras, if you you know, whatever, they are more than happy to do it for you. It was suggested to me quite a few months ago, why don't you do a show? I thought, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I connected with Ryan, and I have felt really good with Ryan doing my shows. And I've loved it. I just sitting here talking to you and listening to what you have to say. I mean, it's you know, there's not too many people that are going to sit down at your age and be able to talk and tell me a lot.
My family has always said I've always talked too much, too loud, and too fast.
Well, now speaking of too loud, you have been very active. As in, I don't know when you started being so active, but there were a lot of preservation and different things that you have been involved with, the environment and different things.
I've been a very active lobbyist in a number of areas.
So what are some of the areas that you have been the most vocal about?
Well, I worked very hard for a long time with the Forest Service, trying to get more wilderness areas designated in the Green Mountain National Forest. And I worked very hard at that. And then I was on the founding board of a group called Forest Watch. And Pat and I, who's no longer with us, I'm sorry to say, who's from Mount Holly, and myself and a number of others did Forest Watch. Jim Northup and, I can't think of all the people that were involved. It no longer exists. I was going to say, what does that encompass? And it was encompassed into a group whose name I never can remember, the Center for Biological Diversity, and that headquarters in Tucson, Arizona. And our veterinary here's daughter works for them in Tucson,
Oh.
which is amazing. I find there's more connections in this
Oh,
world
it is a small world.
between here, there, and everywhere else. You just never know.
It is. It's a very small
And
world.
that is a wonderful organization, and it took over the office that we used to have in Richmond, Vermont. And that is run by Molly, who's the long distance runner? Bob, who's now 90-something, here in Bennington. Anyway,
yeah,
it's
it'll
his,
come to me in a minute.
it's his oldest daughter.
Uh-huh.
And those 3 daughters all came to my summer camp, which I used to run for
Yeah. Madison.
little kids.
Bob Madison.
Yes, Bob
Okay,
Madison,
shoot.
and his daughter Molly
Mm-hmm.
was our executive director for quite a while, and now she works for this other group, which has taken over our office as well as her. And they're still doing this kind of work. They work on trying to preserve habitat. If animals don't have habitat, they're going to die. And that's the only way you can preserve animals, is to preserve their habitat.
Right.
And so every time they start saying you can't have wolves in cattle country, it doesn't work. You've got to have places for these wolves to be.
Right, right. But going back to Forest Watch, what did
Yes.
you do as part of Forest Watch? What was your duty or the people you were involved with?
Well,
What did that?
I spent a lot of time going to meetings.
Uh-huh.
Meetings with this, that, and the other group that we were trying to involve in our work. And we met with people that were opposed to what we wanted to do and people that were for it, and of course raising money.
Mm-hmm. That's hard.
It's very hard. And I got to, Carl Rydell who's no longer with us either, was one of the people that helped us. He used to be, I think, head of the environmental program at UVM, and lived up in North Ferrisburg, where his widow still lives. And he was a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he worked with us. A lot of wonderful people, and we all worked on legislation.
Yeah, a
and
lot of
trying
trips to Montpelier, huh?
Yeah, in Montpelier. I spent an awful lot of time up in
I
Montpelier.
bet you did.
And my car was always covered with
Yes. Yes.
with radical left, mostly environmental bumper
Right,
stickers.
Right, right.
I have "Eat More Kale" and
Yeah.
all kinds of
Yeah,
odd
well,
bumper
starting,
stickers on my car.
you got a relatively new car, and you kept it clear for about maybe 6 weeks, and then boom, the stickers and
Well,
decals
you know
started
who
coming
started
back.
that? The first big bumper sticker that went across the back of my car was WBTN.
I know.
1750
I know.
on your
Right,
dial.
right,
or
right,
no,
right.
1370.
1370. Right, right.
I haven't even got the number right.
Right.
1370 on your
Right,
dial.
right.
Anyway, that started it, and then of course I added more
Oh,
and
what
more
the heck?
and more. and
Right, right.
People who were running for office and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff.
So what are some of the other organizations and people that you like to support, or you wish you could support more, or?
Well, there's an awful lot of them. I was involved in a conference call yesterday with Operation Smile
Yeah,
for cleft
explain that.
palates, and I've always been involved with that. And a child with a cleft palate is just doomed to
Right.
being ostracized in her own
Right.
village or wherever, all over the world, and they work everywhere. And one time, I don't know whether I'd hit the jackpot or what, but I remember I sponsored 2 operations, and ever since then they've decided I must be a very wealthy person, which I am not.
I know that's
But I
those
got-
of us who are retired, we can't support
No.
the things that we want to support as much as
True.
we used to.
And but it was very interesting. They had a conference call with people all over the place, talking about Operation Smile and its work and what they're doing, and they told several life stories of different kids that they have fixed and followed, and how it's changed their lives for the better. And I think they must have caught on to how old I am. Everybody's trying to get me to leave my millions
Yeah,
as
yeah.
a legacy to their
Yeah,
organization.
yeah.
What the poor folks don't know is I ain't got no millions.
Yeah, no, you know, it's when I see on TV when they show children with cleft palates or in these terrible living conditions,
Oh, yeah.
animals who have been abused, I want to send them all money. I mean, I
Yeah.
just think, what
I
can
have
I
a
do?
stack by my chair of things I'd like to be able.
Well, yeah,
to
every once in a
donate to,
while
and
I'll
I
pull,
can't.
I'll pull one out once in a while. I'll say,
Yep.
okay, let me take one, and I'll take.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
just what I do.
it's
It
so
breaks your heart.
it's so difficult, and it's the animal ones. I mean, it's gotten to a point now where I have to mute the TV and turn my face away. I cannot stand seeing those animals that have been abused.
Yes.
And it
I
must
know,
kill
it's
you
very
too
sad.
when
Oh,
you
yeah,
hear about the
it sure
horses.
does.
The people that abuse the horses and stuff like that. I mean,
Oh, they do. I mean, people. There was a case in New York State where somebody went off and left a pasture full. I think they were thoroughbreds, and just they evidently made a bad bet and
Yeah.
lost all their money,
That's
and they just abandoned those things.
just ridiculous.
Luckily, people found them before they died. I think one or two had, and it was really tragic.
Are there-
how people can do that?
No,
I
I don't know either. Are there local local different businesses or organizations that you've been involved with or
Well,
worked with or
not so many local ones.
No.
Mostly they're ones that I've done by mail.
right.
But I have locally. Goodness.
Do you
what
like
have
to
I
get
done
involved?
locally?
Now, you and Alice Miller are pretty good friends, right?
Oh yeah, she's
Do you
a
like
next
to
door
get
neighbor. I've
involved?
known her since she was a horsey kid. She
Oh,
was as bad
okay.
as I was.
Okay.
And she now has two Pasafinos, which are a South American breed that has a very odd running walk that's extremely comfortable to sit to.
Pasifino?
Pasafinos. They're a descendant of a Spanish breed.
Never heard of them.
Well, these came from Florida. They're more or less white, and they're not very large. And she now has two horses. She got them just in the last few years.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've always been very involved in
Local
democratic politics.
government. Right. Local government. Right.
Local government,
Right.
yes. And I've worked very hard for people I've hoped to get elected.
Right. Right.
And
And that's
I
not
have
easy.
a building that's full of lawn signs for everybody you can imagine, going back to Howard Dean.
You
And
hold
I
on to
did
them.
I did get rid of a few that I know won't be running again.
No,
But I used to be in charge of lawn signs for Bennington County,
right.
and helped to get them up and helped to store them.
All right. Howard Dean. What's Howard Dean up to? I don't even know. What's
I
he up
don't
to
know
now?
what he's up to now.
I
He
don't
should
know
have
either.
become Secretary of Health in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, he was.
He was one of the ones that started fundraising in all 50 states instead of just doing the blue states. I mean, don't go where you're already popular. Try and win over some of the ones
Right.
that you're not so popular with,
right,
which
right.
is what he started. And
Huh.
then I think Obama sort of took credit for starting that, but Howard Dean had started it long before he did.
Do you, I know that you've also sponsored things at your own house for people
Yeah.
too. You're
Yes,
very
I've
good
had a
about
lot
that.
of-
If you wanted to, I
I've
know
had
you're.
a lot of fundraising parties for different candidates at my house. We have a beautiful big oak tree
You sure do.
out back that has a terrace and a table, and it makes.
Beautiful.
I've been involved with Beyond War, and I've been involved with a number of different organizations like that, and we do fundraisers. Or we used to. I haven't done any lately, but I
Well,
could again,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I'd be glad to.
it's a lot of work to
It
sponsor
is a lot
something
of work,
like
yeah,
that.
it is, but it's
Now,
fun.
When you had those parties, did you serve your mint juleps, or is that just for the Kentucky Derby?
I only make mint juleps from a recipe by Phil's cousin Charlie down in New Bedford
Uh-huh.
on Kentucky Derby
Kentucky
Day.
Derby Day, right.
And a few of my horsey neighbor friends come up and we have mint juleps together and watch the Kentucky Derby.
Okay. I've never had a mint julep. What
Well, they're
is
pretty
it sweet?
stiff.
Is it sweet?
Yeah, it's fairly sweet, but it has an awful lot of bourbon in it.
Oh, it's bourbon. Okay.
Bourbon, yes.
What else? Bourbon and anything
oh,
else?
Lord, you would ask me. I
No, it's
can't
all right.
think.
I was just wondering, but
I know
bourbon
it.
is enough to know.
Bourbon is the main ingredient.
Got to be a little mint there someplace.
Oh yes, it has to have mint in it, and usually Derby Day is before my mint. I have a lot of mint in my yard, but it doesn't come up till quite a bit later. But Hannaford has herbs that you can buy, fresh herbs in little plastic boxes. And I usually can get some mint there in time for my mint juleps.
There was something oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. There was something I saw at Hannaford's the other day. I said, I can't believe Hannaford has this. Now I can't even, I shouldn't have brought it up because I can't.
They have an amazing array of unusual fruits you've never seen before.
Right, yes they do. Yeah.
And every kind of olive you can imagine.
Right. Our three major stores, Price Chopper, Hannaford, and Aldi's, they're all good places.
They're all very good.
They're
and
all
they
good
have
markets to
interesting
go
things.
to. Yeah.
Each one has its virtues.
Yeah. So, if there was something that you could take care of in your own area of North Bennington or Bennington or something like that, what is something that you'd like to, something positive you'd like to see happen in this area? Is there anything in particular that, you know, if you were as active as you used to be, that you'd want to get involved in?
Oh, goodness, that's a hard question.
Can I ask you about the village school in North Bennington? How do you feel about that?
I think it's wonderful.
Good.
Now, I taught in the school system here for decades and decades and decades, and I loved teaching. And I taught junior primary at Molly Stark for 17 years.
Right.
And at that time, there was no syllabus for what you were supposed to teach because junior primary was a new idea, something between kindergarten and first grade. And it was for immature first graders, and sometimes this was before they had all these Title I categories for various kinds of disabilities.
My wife played.
Every classroom teacher had to deal with all of them.
Right. My wife Grace Mary did a transition from kindergarten to first. There was a
Yeah,
transition.
they call it the transition.
Right.
Well, this was called junior primary in my day.
Right.
And I invented a crazy way of teaching phonics
Right.
with bird identification.
Right.
Which I'm sure would not be acceptable now.
And they
got
thought you
everything
were
on
crazy.
computers. And I was
crazy
once
Vera.
observed by a superior who couldn't imagine what on earth I was teaching bird identification to 6- and 7-year-olds for. They had to learn all the winter birds on flashcards. They were hung below the bird feeder so they could match the bird to the bird card. And every time they did one, they had a list and they'd get checked off. But then I took two paperback bird books apart and mounted them on cards with stuff over them and laminated them. That's the word, laminated them. I forget words these days too. That's what happens when you're 86. And anyway, I had a group of cards that was birds of prey, and another one shorebirds, seabirds, prairie birds, backyard birds, and so forth. But the 26 winter birds they had to know. The others were optional. And at the end of the year, whoever learned the most birds for the year got a Roger Torrey Peterson bird guide.
Okay.
And I've had people say to me on the street, Ms. Viereck, I still have my bird book. And I'll say, well, now, who are you? You've changed a little since you were 6 or 7.
They sure do. It's amazing. Some of them, though, when they look
think you should still know
right,
them.
but some of them do look exactly alike, which is kind of scary, too.
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Man, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if we talked about the birds before or not. We might have talked about that in our part 1 of Don't Fence Around.
I don't remember.
Sure.
My memory is very poor these days.
Well, listen, we did that about 6 weeks ago, so I'm a little, I'm not sure
Well,
either.
we won't go any further into
I'm
that,
not
but it
sure
was a lot
either.
of fun, and I enjoyed it.
What do you think? Of course, I've always said I would not.
It did work, too.
I didn't want. Yeah, I know. You said that it did. I said I never wanted to talk about religion or politics, but what do you think about when you hear teenagers saying there's nothing to do in this area?
That's
you think,
ridiculous.
Don't you think? Yeah. I mean,
It's ridiculous. However, most of what there is to do appeals to grown-ups.
Right.
And there isn't an awful lot for young people to do.
True.
And some of the things they want to do, we don't approve of. But nobody comes up with a better idea.
Right.
And that's
It's hard
what's
to-
sad.
yeah, I know
we
it
need
is.
to have more youth activities. I think Lake Perrin is doing a wonderful job in that.
Oh yeah, they're having they have a lot of activities going on there during the summer, and also Vermont Arts Exchange. I mean, look at
Yeah.
all the
Oh,
things
the Arts
they doing.
Exchange has done an awful lot.
They
Yeah.
they are a wonderful
They've been a
energy there in
tremendous
North Bennington.
addition to the community.
Right.
They do all kinds of wonderful things there, and then they have those wonderful concerts all winter long. But again, that's a grown-up.
Yeah, it
That's
is
a
for-
nightclub kind of a
Right.
thing on a
Right.
Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah, it would be
with-
nice if they could, at somehow, some way, find something
Yeah.
that, some way that, I mean, I know they've tried
Well,
a
now they
lot
do
of
square
different
dances,
things.
but there's a lot of young
Yeah.
people nowadays that think square dancing's much too square.
Right, right. They do
But
have the
as a
contra
kid, I did square
dances,
dances, and
No.
we had a neighborhood square dance group, and it was a teenage group, and we loved it.
but Al, it's a whole different generation.
Yes,
And,
very different.
And you've lived through many of those generations, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Quite
a
few generations. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of our show here. I just want to thank you so much for coming in and being willing to share so many different stories and experiences with us. Our first half of our interview, all of your adventures and everything living in Alaska, everything that you and your husband did. And I always still keep thinking about that grocery list. Once a year they would bring food to you. I think, oh my God, I have trouble making a list just for 1 week. Different thing. I mean, it's amazing, and the stories that
Well,
you
and we did a lot of
I
traveling.
know.
Being teachers, we had summers off. I don't know if I
Right. Well,
talked about
you-
that the first time, did I?
yeah.
We
You-
did. Okay, we
yeah,
won't
I'm
get
pretty
into
sure
that
we
again.
did. But you and Phil, you've had quite a
We've
life.
had a rich life.
You sure have, and
We
you
haven't
have
been
no,
gypped out of much, and I've
No.
always said if I drop dead tomorrow, I won't have missed much, and
right.
I've
so
had a terrific life.
No complaints. So.
No complaint.
Well,
Yep.
I want to thank everybody who has been listening in to your friends and neighbors. I again want to thank Ellen Varick for being a guest with us.
Well, it's
and,
been an honor to be asked.
You know, if we think of it, there may be a part 3 sometime down the road. We'll
Oh,
look
good
and see.
heavens.
We'll look into that. But
I think probably people have had enough of me by now.
We'll see. We'll see.
But
we'll
I'd be
spread
glad
it
to help
out.
out
We'll
with
spread it
anything.
out. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. And whether you were looking at us in the morning or the afternoon or in the evening, I hope you enjoy your friends and neighbors. Let Cat TV know if you are enjoying our show. We'd love to know that. So thank
Well,
you.
I've certainly enjoyed being here, Willie, and thank
Okay.
you for asking me.
You're welcome. So thank you so much to all of our viewers. And this is the end of another Your Friends and Neighbors.
I take a long look around, I have to say, this time of year, it becomes clear, those you hold dear, you draw them near, this time of day, everything